Hello, welcome to another presentation. This one is about developing language objectives, and this is a real-life example. In this video, I'll talk about the student we're developing the language objective for, um, the mainstream class objective for a lesson plan, and we'll talk about developing the language objective given the student and the mainstream objective. The student is named Ku, and his country of origin is Vietnam. He's been in the USA for about 1 month now. He's been in the school for about 3 weeks. He's in the first grade, and when he came into the school, he was assessed with the WAPT and was found to be at the entering level. In other words, he has very little English at this point. His mainstream teacher told me that the objective for the lesson in question will be about first grade language arts, and the objective for the class will be, when presented with a written text, students will be able to add appropriate descriptive detail and show it by inserting adjectives into the text. So now the thing to do is to develop the language objective, and to do that we need to have a framework to operate from to guide us. And in this case, we're using the speaking and writing performance definitions from the WIDA 2012 Amplified Standards, page 9, and the can-do descriptors for grade level cluster 1 and 2 from the WIDA grade level cluster can-do descriptors, page 7. Now, these documents can be found at the WIDA website at www.wida.us. First, we'll talk about the performance definition for the objective. And for this student Ku, who is at the entering level, the performance definition we'll use will be that toward the end of the level, students at this level will be able to produce, quote, words, phrases, or chunks of language with phrase-level grammatical structures and with general content-related words, unquote. Now, similarly, for the can-do descriptor, is that for the domain of writing, the English language learner will be able to copy written language. And we'll keep those definitions and descriptors in mind when we get to writing the objective. So, putting it all together, what we first need to do is consider the content area objective, which we talked about earlier. We'll consider the performance definitions and can-do descriptors for the ELL's level, which we just did, and we consider what the ELL is able to do now. We'll imagine the process by which you can scaffold the student to meet the content area objective. That would be the activities and the sequence, and then write a sequence of language objectives that will get us to meet the content area objective. And then, since we're writing a language objective for a particular content area objective lesson, we need to choose the objectives that we can realistically achieve in the allotted time for the lesson. Okay, now in a more detailed description of the process. As we recall, the mainstream lesson objective is to add descriptive adjectives to written texts. And we recall that Ku is at the entering level, and that at the end of this level he should be able to copy written language while working with words, phrases, and chunks. Now the assessment that Koo took when he entered the school, which is required by law, the WAPT, indicated upon further, not only that he was at the entering level, but a closer look at it showed that he cannot really point to pictures of objects when he's prompted to orally. He was able to point to about 2 or 3 pictures of objects out of a group of several pictures. So, in other words, he knows almost no English at this point. Now, in considering the content area objective of adding descriptive adjectives to text, we can imagine that Koo will first need to develop a vocabulary of objects, which we'll call nouns, and descriptors, adjectives. That will be the first thing he will need to do. Now, given the performance definitions, the can-do descriptors, and his present level of development, logical, not and logical, a logical sequence of development would be to first identify objects with an oral prompt. Then the next objective could be to speak the names of objects when prompted by pointing to objects. Then speak the name of objects when presented with a written word. Then D, match or draw objects with spoken and written words. We can see this is a lengthy process already. And E, produce names of objects orally. F, produce names of objects in spoken and written form. G, identify descriptive adjectives with pictures. For example, the names of colors with the pictures of the colors. And H, associate adjectives with objects with picture prompt. And I, copy words, phrases, and chunks of language when prompted in a variety of ways. Okay, now we can see that there's a long way to go from where he is to meeting the content area objective. So what can we do? All we can do at this point is start at the beginning. Given that the time frame for achieving the content area objective for the mainstream class will probably be 1 or 2 class periods, we can expect the Koo could perhaps achieve the first or maybe the first 2 objectives that we outlined above, to identify objects with oral prompt and to speak the names of objects when prompted by pointing to the objects. So, to summarize, to scaffold Koo, the first grade ELL at the entering level of language development, we must first consider the content area objective, consider the WIDA performance definitions and can-do descriptors, consider what he's able to do now based on our knowledge of him and speaking with the ESL teacher, and we need to imagine the process by which we can scaffold Koo to meet the content area objective, break those down into a sequence of objectives, and then choose the first objectives in our sequence that we think we can achieve in the time frame allotted to the content area lesson. Thank you for your attention.